Hey guys, this is Mike, the Detroit Borg, and today we're checking out what's new with the Oneplus 6T. The update this time is mostly centered around a larger display, a smaller notch, a more rounded design, a noticeably better speaker, a much larger battery, but I think the most interesting new feature is the in-screen fingerprint sensor. For the most part, specs are carried over, but they're still competitive with the flagship, so we get a Snapdragon 845 with 6 gigs of RAM standard. You can also get a second configuration with 8 gigs of RAM, or you can double your storage to 256 gigs, which comes standard with 8 gigs. And that gets you started at $549. That's almost half the price of many flagship phones with these specs and at this screen size. OnePlus sent me their middle configuration with 8 gigs of RAM and 120 gigs of storage, which retails for $579. Now the version I have here is the Midnight Black, which has kind of a matte finish on the back, but you can also get a mirror black, which is the finish I have on my OnePlus 6. You'll see a bit later. Now, like all OnePlus devices, it comes pre-installed with a screen protector. In fact, they recommend the screen protector for the best performance of its in-screen fingerprint sensor, and you'll see that label on the front glass. Inside the accessory box, we'll find our paperwork inside of the included case. So that case is a TPU style case, which is kind of tinted. In terms of the paperwork, of course, we have a SIM ejection tool. We also have one of the most interesting quick start guides I've ever seen. So it sort of doubles as a OnePlus poster, and if you flip it around on the other side, you'll see a quick start guide in multiple languages. And as always, OnePlus likes to throw in some stickers, and in this case, it sort of highlights the OnePlus community and some of their taglines, such as Flagship Killer. There's even a few stickers dedicated to the alert slider. Further emphasizing the community of OnePlus, there's actually an invitation letter just underneath the paperwork. Now this opens up and reveals a handwritten letter from the CEO of OnePlus, so if you want to read it, just pause the screen. In terms of the accessories in the bottom of the box, we take it for granted that OnePlus has one of the fastest charging solutions out there, so we have a fairly large power brick that comes with it. It's no longer called dash charging, but it's still the same technology. We also get a USB-A to USB-C cable with those OnePlus colors, and a new accessory we haven't seen before is the USB-C to headphone adapter, and that's because the OnePlus 6T, like a lot of smartphones today, has eliminated its 3.5mm headphone jack. OnePlus also sent along some of their first-party cases, and they're really nice. So if you like that classic sandstone style case, OnePlus sells a version for the 6T. We also have a very vibrant Oneplus Red Case, which is very similar to the Apple silicone cases, so it's lined with a microfiber material with a very grippy exterior. But by far my favorite case is the nylon bumper case. So the back of the case has a fabric material which is surrounded by a nice rubber grip, and the case is lined in a microfiber material. The biggest news for this generation is the slightly larger OLED display. It's up from 6.28 inches to 6.41 inches. That also comes with a slightly taller resolution. Both are 1080p screens, but the vertical resolution is up to 2340 from 2280. So this retains the sharp 402 pixel density. The quality of the display here looks exactly like the 6, which is to say it gets extremely bright with vibrant eye-popping color. It really is a stunning display to use, and it's one of my favorites. But if the display is too eye-searingly bright, OnePlus has loaded the phone with a bunch of color profiles you can switch between. So that includes sRGB, DCI-P3, or you can use the adaptive mode. The phone is slightly taller to accommodate the larger display, but they've been able to shave the bezels down even further with this generation. So although we still have a chin, it's so small that it's barely noticeable. It's certainly much better than the big chins on some of the flagships today. The corners have also been rounded off even further, which makes this larger phone easier to use, but also makes the phone look nicer and further softens the chin. But the most talked about design improvement with this display is the new smaller teardrop-shaped notch. To achieve this design, they've had to move the earpiece to the top edge of the glass. Although it looks tiny, sound quality is unaffected by the design change and sounds just as loud and clear as before. If you look closely, you can also see the light and proximity sensor squeezed in right above the camera. The only thing missing from the previous design is an LED notification light. Although it's not using the same facial mapping technology of the iPhone, it's the most reliable and fastest system I've ever used on Android. Like the iPhone, it's not picky about position or placement and can still scan your face from several different angles. Amazingly, you can also use this in a completely dark room because it uses the light from the display, but it's not as effective if the display is too dim. However, that's where the new screen unlock feature comes in handy, and fortunately you can use these in combination. This is actually the first time I've used an in-screen fingerprint reader, and although I don't think it's as quick as Face Unlock, it feels nearly as quick as a conventional fingerprint sensor. I think it's far easier to use than a sensor on the back of a phone, so there's much less fumbling to find it. This also means you're less likely to smudge your camera with your fingerprints, which is kind of nice. But the way it works is interesting. So when you press your finger to the display, that portion of the screen lights up in bright green to read your fingerprint. The overall design and construction of the 6T is very similar to the 6. We have glass covering the front and back framed in metal, which all fits together seamlessly. The 3D glass on the front curves just slightly to smooth out the transition to the metal. The glass on the back is curved at the sides where you grip the phone, so it feels very comfortable to handle, especially for such a large phone. This design keeps the phone thicker in the areas where it matters so it can pack that larger battery while keeping the edges thin and comfortable to grip. I actually really like this matte finish on the Midnight Black version. This is actually a multi-layer film, and it has a really neat special effect that's sort of hidden until you light it up. So as you shine light on the back of this phone, you'll see this sort of S shape that moves around as you pitch the phone. On the right side, we'll find OnePlus's signature 3-position alert slider. So this allows you to quickly switch between different silent modes. Below that is the power button, which has been shifted down a bit further with the 6T, probably to make it easier to distinguish them by feel. On the left side, everything is in the exact same place, so we have a dual SIM tray. We also have the volume rocker just below that. On the top edge, we'll find the microphone, which has moved position on the 6T. The bottom edge is where things have changed up a bit. So again, we have a USB-C port at the center, this time flanked on either side by symmetrical grills. One has the mono speaker, the other has the microphone. So although we gain symmetry, we lose the headphone jack. Besides using the headphone adapter that comes with the OnePlus, they do sell a version of their Bullets headphones with a USB-C connector. They also sent a pair of these out to me so I could take a look at them, and besides the clever design and sturdy all-metal construction, they sound really incredible, especially for a set of headphones that should cost around $19.95 when they officially launch. Although the 6T did not get a set of stereo speakers, the new mono speaker is a big improvement over the 6. Not only is it much louder, but it's also much clearer, and it's been tuned in a way that sort of replicates front-facing speakers. It's not quite as lopsided as it was before. The only problem with the speaker design is that it's pretty easy to accidentally muffle the speaker while you're handling the phone in landscape orientation.
Starfleet is a promise. Starfleet is a promise. I give my life for you, you give your life for me. I give my life for you, you give your life for me. And nobody gets left behind.
As I mentioned, CPU and RAM is carried over from the OnePlus 6, but what's increased here is battery size. So the battery has increased from 3300 to 3700, a 20% increase. So because we have the same specs, performance is identical, which is impressive. So if you compare this to the most recent flagship from Google, the Pixel 3, you'll see very similar or even better performance. OnePlus 6T does increase performance of the RAM through something called Smart Boost. So this is designed to improve app cold start by up to 20% by sorting data of frequently used apps in RAM. Right now, this is specifically targeting gaming apps. But regardless of performance improvements, something OnePlus has always done really well is hardware and software optimization. So performance on the OnePlus 6T is extremely quick throughout the entire interface. The camera hardware is carried over from the OnePlus 6, so we still have a 16 megapixel front-facing camera with an f2.0 aperture. That's good for 1080p video at 30 frames per second, and performance is identical to the OnePlus 6. The dual camera setup is also the same hardware, so again we have a 16 megapixel sensor with optical image stabilization and a wide-angle f1.7 aperture. The secondary camera is a 20 megapixel sensor without optical image stabilization. That secondary camera is not a telephoto camera, but it's used for depth perception, and it's also used to enhance the main camera. So it's used to improve digital zoom, but it's not actually optically zooming. Performance of these cameras is mostly the same from the OnePlus 6, but the big news here is something called Nightscape. Essentially, this is an enhanced HDR. It's designed to bring up light in low light situations and bring up some color and detail. Overall, I've had very limited time with this feature, but it does make a difference. It tends to bring up more color and sort of even out the shadows while bringing down some of the highlights. But sometimes it tries to bring up too much detail, so it over-defines things and over-sharpens them while trying to smooth out the low light noise, so it's a little artificial. Checking out this interface, you can see the always-on display gives us our fingerprint scanner. So if we move the device around, it should get to the always-on display, and we can go ahead and tap our finger to unlock, and it happens very quickly. But what's even more quick is face unlock. So just to show you this, let me go ahead and wake it up, tilt it toward me, unlocks really quickly. If I didn't do that, you can see just how fast it unlocks. I can't even see the lock screen. Now this is Android 9 running the latest version of Oxygen OS, and for the most part it's pretty familiar, but there's always a few tweaks here. So for example, we have our navigation bar, which has those gesture features we're familiar with from Android 9. So again, you tap the home icon here to go back home. You swipe up to get to your recent apps. Now the recent apps viewer has a few tweaks. So for example, we can tap the ellipses in the upper right corner, And this gives us access to the app info. We can enter split screen mode, or we can lock the app. So if you lock the app, that prevents the app from being dismissed. Now, if you want to clear all, you'll find the clear all button just down below. So to enter split screen mode, you can see the app hides toward the top. You can pick from one of your recent apps or go to the home screen and pick one of the apps from your app drawer. So I can go ahead and resize these windows and interact with both apps at the same time. Now, if you don't like this navigation bar, you can customize this. Just go to settings, and under settings, you'll find buttons and gestures. Under buttons and gestures, you go to navigation bar and gestures. And from here, you have 3 options. So you can go with the classic back, home, and recent apps, and the version I prefer, which is back and home, or the navigation gestures, which are also really nice. So in that case, you swipe up to go to home, which is very much like iOS, and you also swipe up and hold to get to your recent apps. To get to the app drawer, you swipe up on the home screen, but there's another feature to know about. So if you swipe to the right in the app drawer, you get to a space where you can hide applications that you don't want to see in the app drawer. So to add apps, you hit the plus sign, and you can add any one of these apps. So let's go ahead and add the Notes app. Click back, and you'll see the Notes app is now hidden. So when I swipe to the app drawer, you'll see the app is missing, but again, just swipe to the right to get to it. You can also remove this by long pressing and click unhide. If you swipe right on the home screen, we still have that very familiar shelf. So this gives us quick access to apps we might need to use quite often, such as the Memo app. We have some of our contacts, our device health, and more. And of course, you can add widgets from here as well. We also have our notification shade up top, which you can expand out to get to your quick settings. So there's lots of quick settings up here. And of course, you can edit these and add even more. So we have things like night mode, which takes away the blue light, so it warms it up, battery saving modes, and much more.
Ultimately, the OnePlus 6T doesn't check every single flagship box possible. We still don't have wireless charging or an IP water resistance rating, and even though the new speaker is excellent, we still don't have a set of stereo speakers. But as $1,000 phones become the norm, the OnePlus 6T is still the incredible flagship bargain it always has been. And more importantly, even at this price, the 6T still outshines many flagships in terms of display size, battery size, design, performance, and features. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed this look at the OnePlus 6T. They go on sale on November 1st, so hope you guys check one out. If you guys enjoyed this video, please let me know with a like, and I'll see you again in my next video.